Marhaba, and welcome to the Matrix Green Pill, where real people connect.
Hello and welcome back to the Matrix Green Pill podcast. I am Khushi Malia, and today I'm excited to introduce Daryl Urbanski, our podcast guest for the week. Daryl is the founder and president of BestBusinessCoach and is a fellow podcast host of a show called the Best Business Podcast. But before I get ahead of myself, let's hear from Daryl himself. Daryl, welcome and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Khushi. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here.
I'm sure many of our listeners have already heard about you, but for those who haven't, could you please introduce yourself?
So my name is Daryl Urbanski. I'm a Canadian. Right now I'm living in the Philippines at the time of this recording. My main claim to fame is helping create 7-figure automated income streams online via online marketing and automation tools. I also had a book that hit number 1 on Amazon, the top 100 on Amazon for marketing and sales, once upon a time in the early 2012, 2013, I think it was. Really, the reason why my name's popping up in places now is because I have a mission to help create 200 new multi-million-dollar businesses. How? With proven scientific methods for business success and accountability to behave as required. So the mission is to help raise the standard of living around the world by making business success easier, trying to improve the quality of life and standard of living for people around the world by enabling more people to live life on their terms and build up the communities they live in as they do it.
That sounds pretty interesting. Since you mentioned that you're here to help 200 new multi-millionaire business owners, what exactly is your idea behind that and how do you plan on doing this?
So a lot of people, their focus is just on how do I make sales and how do I get more leads and generate leads and sales. And, in the beginning, that was my concern too, obviously, and it's always, it never stops for any business. They have to generate leads and sales. But in having said, as I said in the beginning, that I've helped companies do millions of dollars in sales, I was really shocked to see that, making a lot of money doesn't guarantee success. And it doesn't guarantee success beyond the money you just made. Money you made yesterday doesn't guarantee you're going to make money tomorrow. Good example is like Blockbuster versus Netflix. Blockbuster was a multi-billion, with a B, billion-dollar company, and they got taken out by a startup called Netflix, and they eventually went bankrupt. Enron's another company, I believe. I forget the year now. I'll probably get the years wrong, but it was like one year they did $101 million in sales, and the next year they were bankrupt. Making a lot of money or being able to generate leads and sales doesn't guarantee success. And, at the beginning of the pandemic, a lot of people were arguing about the science. And I felt like I had a philosophy for what leads to success in business. I've been doing this sort of thing for a long time. When I was in high school, I did a co-op with a company called MarketMe.ca, which was in partnership with another company called BizBound.ca. And they were like entrepreneur resource centers, you could say. So my early introduction was, I was like 17. I was nominated Young Entrepreneur of the Year in my hometown. And like I said, I've helped companies make a lot of money. And I thought I knew what related to business success, but it bothered me because I would have clients I worked with or people I was coaching, and some would have success and not others. I was trying to figure out, what made the difference. So in 2020, I spent $50,000 US of my own money to hire 7 different research teams to help me go through all the academic journals and start looking at different studies. It's funny you say you're in Dubai. One of them I'm actually looking at, I got a spreadsheet here. It was a study done in Saudi Arabia called Critical Success Factors of Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises in Saudi Arabia. We looked at hundreds and thousands of these kinds of studies. Now, do you know what a meta-analysis is?
I'm not sure I do.
That's okay. Not a lot of people do. So one person does a study and they publish their findings and they say that's a study. But when someone tries to summarize hundreds of studies have found or thousands of studies, it's called a meta-analysis or a systemic review. So whenever you hear someone say like this is a systemic review or this is a meta-analysis, it means that they're summarizing the findings of hundreds, maybe even thousands of studies, research that other people have done. We did like a meta-analysis. We went through all of these. There's even one from the Harvard Business Review. They looked at 2,500 CEOs. They were trying to answer the question, what sets successful CEOs and their organizations apart? And we went through, like I said, hundreds of thousands of these, writing down all the factors these studies claim to prove. And even some of them disprove certain things, like that one I mentioned earlier from Saudi Arabia. They proved 2 factors were ineffective. meaning they didn't really change the odds of success for the business. And one was business characteristics and the other one was the business environment. So we looked at all these factors proven by all these researchers over like 100 years of studying business success. And we tried to find out what the universal factors were. And we came up with 8. And those universal factors are self-efficacy, market intelligence, strategic planning, marketing strategy, sales strategy and skills, money management, business operations, and business intelligence. We call them the critical 8. And some of these sound self-explanatory, and I'll dive into some of them in a minute. We also found that there was a 9th factor, the government and economic conditions. You can have a good economy or a bad economy. You can have a friendly government to businesses or a hostile government. What we found was it doesn't matter what kind of economy you're in, and it doesn't matter what kind of government you have. All you can do as a business owner is focus on these 8 things. So one of the things I mentioned was self-efficacy. And so here's the issue with a lot of business coaching and business advice. I saw this great meme on social media the other day, and it was someone said, hey, my friend is VP of a $100 million company at the age of 30. I talked to him on the phone, and here's how he said he did it. Number 1, he gets up at 4:30 a.m. Number 2, he takes a cold shower every day. Number 3, he works out for 45 minutes a day. Number 4, his dad is the president. And it's like a joke, right? Like that's why he was successful, because his dad. And so a lot of these gurus and a lot of these success advisors, how do you really know? I call it the weekend guru. There's people that go and they pay like $1,000 to do a weekend seminar. And I don't mean to insult anyone by any means. We're all just trying to help each other, right? People can go and pay $1,000 and do a weekend seminar. And now they're a certified coach. And now, they're a leadership coach, or they're a business coach, or they're a marketing consultant. And now they go around and tell people, pay me money, and basically bet your future, right? Your livelihood, your ability to pay your medical bills, your kids' school fees, your ability to retire on this advice. I came from a household of hard sciences. My dad worked in applied physics and geology. It just doesn't sit well with me. I wanted a better explanation. One of the things I said was relevant for business success is self-efficacy. So what does that even mean? So we did the same thing we did at the beginning, and we dove into hundreds of studies and meta-analyses on self-efficacy as it applies to business. And we looked at all the factors, all the things that were like the proven things. We found out that self-efficacy in business is 3 distinct things. It's demonstrating specific personality traits, it's having specific leadership skills, and it's specific personal discipline. So, for example, a lot of people say, oh, well, if you want to run a business, you need to learn to be a leader. But what does it mean to be a leader? It's like branding. It's such a vague term. If I say education, some people might think sitting in a classroom, someone else might think reading a book, someone else might think hands-on experience. And we've eliminated that guesswork. So when I say you need to improve your leadership skills, I specifically mean you have to improve your self-awareness skills, your communication and cooperation skills, your emotional intelligence skills, and your adaptability. That's what it means to have leadership skills. The personality traits that I mentioned is locus of control, which means you're a control freak about the things you can control. If you can't control it, don't stress out, right? But control the things you can. Extroversion, for example, this interview. I can be an introvert, that's fine, but I have to demonstrate extrovert personality traits. I'd be willing to jump on a call with someone maybe I haven't met, I might feel shy about, because business is about meeting people. All a business is a group of people who solve the pain of another group of people, and they solve it with a product or service. That's all it is. So extroversion, openness to experience, agreeableness, because you have to work with others, conscientiousness, and acceptance of criticism and feedback. Those are the personality traits that you have to have. And the personal disciplines, you need to have health disciplines, physical health, mental health. If you can only run 1 kilometer and you're completely tired, like, oh, I need to lay down, take a nap. Everybody wants to talk about time management and productivity tools, but something not a lot of people talk about is energy management. That if you can only run 1 kilometer before you need to take a nap, that's your gas tank you bring to every day of work, of life, of your meetings. There's a relationship between being physically fit and having more emotional resilience, like stronger mental fortitude. So the two are connected. So you got to have physical health disciplines, mental health disciplines. You do need time management. You have to have a commitment to improve, but they ultimately come down to a sense of discipline and urgency. If you have a sense of discipline and you have a sense of urgency that I can't wait to do those push-ups till tomorrow, you're going to get more stuff done. You're going to have better discipline. You're going to have better mental, physical health, and all these things connect together. So part of you asked, how am I going to help create 200 new multi-million-dollar businesses? By doing interviews like this and giving away this knowledge for free. Because I think there's a lot of good people out there that have gifts to bring to the world. And it's just really confusing. Like, what do you need to do? Right? And it just shouldn't be.
That actually sounds very interesting. I got to learn a lot just from that answer. Also, success seems to be like a keyword for you, including with your motto, your success is my success. So could you tell me more about what you mean by that and what is the key message that you're trying to send out to your audiences?
Well, one thing I'm grateful for is that I don't sell cigarettes, I'm not selling alcohol, I'm not selling sugar foods. That for me to have been in business for 17 years, I have to help other people be successful. There are charlatans in the world. There are parasites. There is crony capitalism, where these systems are set up or networks set up where you have to pay money that for no reason other than just somebody wants to make money. But generally speaking, I believe businesses solve problems. You have a toothache, you go to the dentist. You're bored, you go see a movie, or you go you go to the arcade, or you're hungry, you go to a restaurant. You want to feel like you look good, your haircut. They solve specific problems. And so when I say your success is my success, it's just something I've been saying since I was 17, that I just wanted to find my way in the world by being an agent of good and a purveyor of that. That's all I mean by that. Even if you don't have an ethical bone in your body, let's say inside you're like Dr. Evil, but you want to have a business and have it survive long term, the only way to do business is going to be to take as good of care of everyone as you can. If you're not going to succeed, right? Not every relationship's going to be perfect, especially in today's transparent world where people can Google you or look up your, and reviews online and all that stuff. You just have to be as good of a person as you can be, even if you don't have an ethical bone in your body. Your success is my success is a reminder to myself. It's honestly like how I'm going to survive. If I help people and they have amazing results, they're going to tell their friends, versus the opposite, where if I just, some people, they don't think long term. They just try to like rip people off and they're just thinking about making a quick buck now, but then they don't realize they're building like a wall. It used to be called the Oprah effect. So if you were going to be mentioned on Oprah in her prime, it killed businesses because some businesses wouldn't be prepared for the onslaught. Everyone thinks it'd be amazing to have like 1 million orders for their widget come in, but it killed businesses. If you had a bakery and then Oprah just casually mentioned you and all of a sudden your phone blows up and there's a mob outside your door, they don't care that you're not ready. They start like the negative reviews pile up. We came, the service was bad. I got my thing. It wasn't fully cooked. They don't understand that you're doing everything you can to service the people. Again, it's a catch-22 in the sense that you just have to do the best you can for everybody, because even sometimes there are no second chances.
That actually makes so much sense. Also, it is important to get out of your own box and look around you and see how you can help another person. How did you come across the idea of creating a business that helps other businesses grow?
I'll start probably at the most relevant time. I just come back from working in Tokyo for 3 years, and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do in Canada. And I've been training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at Hickson Gracie. He's a legend in the sport. And he has a school in Tokyo that I trained at for 2 years. And I was training at a school in my hometown. I was looking for a place to train in my hometown. And the guy that was there was charging something like $150 a month. And he was a blue belt, which is a low ranking belt. I was a blue belt at the time. And, it was a small town school. Meanwhile, when I was in Tokyo, I think I was paying $80 a month. And I was at like a legend, like a living legend, his school. And every class, there were blacks and brown belts there as students. And in jiu-jitsu, it's a little different than judo and karate and some of these other ones like taekwondo. People can get their black belt in 4 years. It takes, on average, for a lot of people, 8 to 12 years to get a black belt. So my point is that I was paying $80 and the level of quality of training partners I had was through the roof. And I go back to Canada and this guy was charging $150, all the power to him. He was able to do it, but I just felt like I didn't want to pay that. I didn't see the value in it for me. And I ended up starting a rec club, which at some point I ended up turning into a real business and started as a martial arts school. And I used to love getting the testimonials from people. Like there was a girl, some guy was getting friendly with her at a nightclub and she managed to defend herself. There was another student, he had a drinking problem. And because of the physical discipline and just seeing the results physically, he just was taking better care of his body. He's saying that his wife's proud of him. His kids are proud of him. He just feels like a better person. And so I felt like I was making a real difference in people's lives. I was reinvesting everything I was making into learning more. I wanted it to be easy, right? I mean, just the truth. I wanted to know the magic bullet so I could just grow my school success to be a big success. I grew it to 6 figures. It was a very comfortable business, a lifestyle business, you could say. I had 4 instructors, 2 sales reps, and a manager. A lot of the things I was learning, I was sharing with my friends that own businesses in Canada. And then I realized, because some of them had come back to me. One of them, his name's Corey. he got promoted from manager of like a satellite office for a company based out of Ottawa. He got promoted from just managing that satellite office to being CEO of the company. And it was $1 million company out of Ottawa. I remember he called me. He was like, Daryl, I've never been a CEO before. I need you. I'm going to pay you per month just to like be on retainer to like hop on some calls with me and listen in on some stuff and be my advisor. And I realized at that point that with my martial arts school, I was able to help a few hundred people. Those were my members. But if I helped business owners, every business owner represented a few hundred customers, plus their staff, plus the vendors. So I felt like I could have an exponential impact on the world by helping business owners. And that's kind of when I pivoted. I wrote 3 books kind of quickly. I called them business books for busy people. I was really kind of testing to see what the market was interested in. One of them was called Ancient Secrets of Lead Generation, Your Guide to Better Leads with Less Effort. It started to take off, practiced what I preached. I marketed it, and I got it hit #1 on Amazon for top 100 in marketing and sales. And then I used that to get on local radio and local news, television. I put a small coaching group together, and that's kind of was the beginning of it. I've just done it on the side. Since then, I got involved with some different businesses full time, helping them grow. But I've always kind of gone back and forth from having some clients on the side, having equity in a company to actually helping grow something. That's what led me to it, having a bigger impact on the world.
That does answer my question, because it's interesting how you've gone from having like teaching martial arts into by coincidence creating your own business. But I feel like your story about how you came across Best Business Coach is the epitome of the best creations happen by accident.
Yeah, so Best Business Coach came about because when I had helped my first client, we did $1.6 million in 8 months with a single marketing strategy that I had built kind of evenings and weekends after hours. We had like a main focus that we had done during office hours, but I felt I could automate it and then using paid ads, drive people into that kind of customer experience and automate it. And we managed to do that successfully and then scale that. So when I say I built the evenings and weekends, we did something full time, but it was just like a one-time annual thing. But I found a way to recreate it online in an automated way where anybody could experience it again. And we used paid ads to scale that. Did $1.6 million with that in 8 months. As a company, we did over $3 million as a whole. And at the time, I was getting to rub elbows with all sorts of people. I mean, the CEO I was working with, he was singing my praises to all of my friends. He was a well-connected individual. I just got to meet all these amazing people, and I didn't have any product or platform or need for it on my own, but I wanted to be of value to these people. So I originally started the Best Business Podcast. The reason why I called it that is because when I did my keyword research, that's what people were Googling. They were looking for the Best Business Podcast. So I just named it what people were looking for. And I just wanted to be of value to some of these amazing people I was being connected with. And so all I was doing was just interviewing them and putting the interviews up for free. That's kind of how it all started. And that's where we got the domain, BestBusinessCoach.ca, because same thing, I thought the best coach would be this collection of amazing people, not me. I'm not saying I'm the best coach. It was the best coach would be this collection of knowledge, this library of experience. That's kind of how it came to be. And I've just kind of been building on that. It was just something I was doing on the side to be of value. So when I met someone at a conference or seminar or inside of we used to go to these business mastermind meetings in Vegas, you meet someone that's got 100,000, million, 2 million followers. I just wanted to build a relationship with them. And so that's why I was doing the podcast interviews on the side. I didn't at the time have a purpose. I wasn't going to sell advertising on the podcast. I wasn't going to use it to pitch a product or anything. I just was trying to get to know these people better and build a relationship with them and be of value for them. That's all.
That's an interesting vision. So based on what I've heard from you so far, you've just seemed to have had an absolutely interesting journey to building your business. What would you say has been the highlight of your career so far?
It was amazing to be able to have a skill set that I felt like there's only 24 hours in a day. So to make more money, you have to figure out how to get out of the time for money trap, because otherwise you inherently have a limit on how much money you can make. Whereas even if you take something as simple as changing the oil of a car, Canada, last I checked, this is probably a while ago now, I think it was like $50 or $100 or something like that to change the oil of your car, but it takes them 15 minutes to do, right? So they were selling an end result. Just one of the highlights for me was just really knowing that I was able to sell something, make a lot of money, and it was something that we were getting tons of testimonials about. that was really the highlight. It was when I realized the things I've been doing and applying to my martial arts school, which was an offline brick and mortar business, when I applied those online to something that could serve anybody in the world, it was like different, more zero. It was just scalable. I mean, there's a lot of highlights. I don't know why I say those kinds of people, but being able to associate with people that take certain things about their life seriously. It's hard to not respect someone that wins a gold medal or wins a world championship at something. And even in business, if they've built something remarkable. I met a lot of self-made people, which I think is amazing, versus someone who's, had things made easy for them or handed to them. And I really respected and appreciate that. And I think I learned a lot from that. And again, that leads back to the research I did, because sometimes there's people dispensing advice. And how do you know that they weren't just part of some boys club? How do you know that they just didn't pick the right industry and the industry took off? How do you know these things? I don't know. I just love what I do. There's been ups and downs to all of it. I think that was probably one of the highlights. I set a goal to make $1 million. What I didn't say was I wanted to make $1 million for myself, but I was like, I want to make $1 million. And we did. We did over 3 million. And that was a big highlight because it was one of those really visible. I set a goal. I was obsessed about that goal. And then we did it. And I developed skill sets during it that I think will help feed me for life. Money comes and money goes. People think, man, if I had like $100,000, I'd be set. But what they don't realize is it's like if you had 100,000 watermelons on your front yard, you have this giant pile of watermelon. Well, the rats and the ants are going to eat a bunch of those. And then people are going to be walking by and they'll be like, hey, what's up with all that watermelon? You're going to have some people that just come and take some in the night. You're going to have people come in and go, hey, you can't have this watermelon here. You got to give us some watermelon, or you got to move your watermelon somewhere else. It's just kind of like that. Anytime you accumulate a large amount of something, it becomes hard to hold on to it. And, but the skills, no one can take away your skill sets. And again, being able to serve so many people. Look at this. This is why I choose to do podcast interviews, because you and I are spending an hour together, but this recording is something that may reach someone in need anytime, as long as, it's like a digital tattoo. It'll be posted online essentially forever. And as long as it's got an SEO notes type thing, or it's put out there, even if it doesn't, someone might stumble along, find it who needs it. And so this is a way for me to have high leverage over my time. Because with 1 hour with you, this 1 hour can be replayed 100,000 times and it can serve 100,000 people. And so I'm kind of rambling on and on here, but that's why I say I've just enjoyed my whole career. There's definitely been highs and lows. There's been times I wanted to give up, like anything. I'm just grateful that I keep, getting better. Feel like it anyway.
That's actually pretty interesting. And you can go on talking for another hour. I would happily listen because I'm getting to learn so much from you. And I'm sure that a lot of our listeners would too find this extremely interesting.
Thank you. Just here to help.
Speaking of our listeners, actually, what is one piece of advice as a business coach that you would like to share with someone looking to grow their business?
So a couple of things. One is time management, energy management are monumental. We lose so much to waste. So you really have to take control of your day. You really have to try to cut out things that are like, if you think about every day you're given $24 and you can put $1 towards your physical health, $1 towards your mental health, $1 towards a relationship with your family, $1 towards a relationship with a girl or boy you really like, $1 towards growing your business. But a lot of people don't think of their days like that. And they just squander so much time. And then they wake up and they're 30, 40, 50 years old and they go, what happened? And it's just they've squandered it all. So time is an amazing resource. It doesn't matter if you're a genius. It doesn't matter if you're at the top of society or the bottom of society. We all have 24 hours a day. In some ways, it's a great equalizer. And the next thing I would just say is really talk to the people as best as you can. That's another reason why I'm coming out and doing all these interviews, because I want to know what questions people have. Where are they getting stuck? Your business is going to serve a community. A lot of people dream, like when I say I build 7-figure automated income streams, people are like, wow, that's the dream. You sit on the beach and make money. Kinda, but it's like Netflix or Gmail. Gmail is a service that serves over 1 billion people. And I think they have a team of 60 engineers. So there's huge leverage to it, but it doesn't necessarily mean those engineers can go kick it on the beach and Gmail will run itself. So there kind of is, it's like anything. You can plant a garden, but if you turn away from it, the weeds will take it over. So there is, leverage to stay connected to what people need and want. That's really, really, really important.
Your saying is applicable regardless of whether you have a business of your own or not.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, which is why this conversation is extremely interesting to me. Also, because I am relatively new to the corporate world.
So corporations can operate a little bit differently. So I was really shocked. One of the first companies I helped do over $1 million, what blew my mind was I saw a part of human nature that had been very foreign to me. It only existed in the movies. And what I mean by that is, at the time we're making a lot of money, right? Like $3 million is a lot of money for an office of like 20 people. I mean, obviously it wasn't distributed evenly by any means. I thought like we had the Super Bowl team. We just got to keep winning games. I'm going to be here 5 years from now. We're just going to keep doing what we're doing and do it better. But what happened on the inside, and I feel like it's kind of relatable. I don't know if I'm going to ruffle feathers with this answer or not, but I feel like there's the builders and the self-made people who figure out how to do something that's rewarded generously because of what they do is so valuable. And then there's the people that are around them that do something to contribute, but they don't know how to recreate that themselves, right? Like if you think of like a person and family creates something, they become rich, and all their relatives and family members, they don't know how to do that. And so then they all fight over the inheritance. And that's kind of what happened in this company. Whereas I thought we were nowhere near, like if this was a baseball game with 10 innings, like we're in the second inning, we've got a couple more years out of this. We made a plan how to grow this thing to 10 million over 2 years. And it's just, there was fighting inside and people got kicked out of the company and their commission was eaten by other people on the executive board. And like, it was just a weird phenomenon for me and it kind of helped me realize that, the people that typically make large sums of money are people that are motivated by money. And you know what I mean? Like that's where the fight, like they don't want to share it necessarily. It's like power typically goes into the hands of the power hungry because the person who deserves the power the most probably doesn't want it and doesn't seek it. So even though they might be the best one to wield power over other people, they're not the ones that are looking for it. You know what I mean? They're not the ones that are obsessed about getting it. And that was a real shock for me because I'm not very financially motivated. I mean, I was when I was a kid. Like I said, I want to make $1 million, but I'm not trying to buy a Lamborghini. I'm not like, I feel security by having my bills paid for months in advance and being able to go and enjoy the experiences that I feel make life meaningful. Having a fancy car, it's not going to do anything but draw attention to me that I don't want, right? Like some of those things, I'm really into merit and skill-based stuff. Not everybody's like that, but that was a big eye-opener. So you mentioned you're in the corporate world is a little bit different. So corporate world it depends on the company culture, but where you would hope it would be a meritocracy, meaning it's merit-based, so those who are most skilled. Often there's things like the Peter principle. People are promoted to their highest level of incompetence. So if you're a sales rep and you do a great job, they're like, wow, you're a great sales rep. We're going to hire you and make you a sales trainer. And so they hire you to be a sales trainer. And if you do a great job at that, they go, wow, you're great at that. We're going to promote you and make you a sales manager. And they promote you, make you a sales manager. And you do a good job at that. They go, hey, good job. We're going to make you head of sales for the company as a whole. And they put you as head of sales for the company as a whole. And you suck at that. And you just stay there forever because they can't demote you because they want to acknowledge your skill. But at the same time, you don't necessarily perform well in that job. And a lot of companies don't realize things like instead of keeping that person a sales manager and paying them more because they do it so exceptionally well, paying them more and giving them benefits and bonuses so they have less incentive to go and change to a different company. Instead, they just promote till the person is kind of incompetent at what they do. And then you get into these weird things where people then end up playing tribal, like monkey status games, holding on to these high-paying positions where it's now a political game versus performance game. And that's one of the downfalls of corporation. That's why I say the builders have finished and they move out and the managers and the parasites come in. And that's because the managers, somebody knows how to build something, but a builder typically isn't a manager. They might know how to build something and make it go, but they might be the creative type that gets bored. And so they won't have the mental fortitude to focus on the one thing to grow it and expand it. Like I'm kind of like that. I like to build stuff. I like starting things and getting them going. I want to build a machine. I want to run the machine. I want to test it in a bunch of different scenarios, make sure it's resilient. And then I'm bored with it. And I want to do the next thing. And I need a manager to come in and like take over and run it. There's nothing wrong with being a manager, but sometimes parasites come instead of managers and they just feed off of it. That happens in politics too, right? They say strong men make good times make weak men make bad times make strong men, and the cycle repeats itself. So you mentioned you're in corporation. The way to survive in corporate is to be good at what you do and be able to play the political game.
That's an interesting school of thought. But again, as you mentioned in the beginning of your answer, it all comes down to the company culture.
Right, 100%.
On a slightly separate note, based on the hour-long conversation that we've had, I would like to say that your thoughts come off as a very altruistic person. So just in terms of getting to know you a little bit better, what is one piece of advice or belief that you personally live by?
It's a weird thing in life in that you don't live life alone. but all your results come from what you do alone. So what I mean by that is we depend on each other. We're communicating using something that other people created. I didn't make the internet. I didn't figure out how to make a microphone or a laptop. I'm benefiting from this. I always think about that when I drive. Like somebody else spent days in the hot sun building this road for me. And I'm so grateful that they did that. So we all stand on each other's work. But at the same time, no one will do your push-ups for you. No one will read the books for you. No one will be able to practice the skill for you. So it's just a weird catch-22 where sometimes the best thing you can do for the world is be your best self. I'm not sure if this is advice, but you just asked me about that. And for me, I didn't really have a support network. I was an orphan. I've never really known performance award type situations. Like I was guaranteed a roof over my head and food in my belly till I was 18. But aside from that, like my daughter's going to ballet, she's going to go to jujitsu and she does soccer and, she's in a nice private, like nothing like that was done for me. For me, my whole life has been about performance based. All my hobbies are performance based. You can almost say one of my favorite quotes about mastery is do it until it becomes dull and then keep going until it's beautiful. And I think what's really important is that you're playing the right games, you're running the right races, because then it doesn't necessarily matter if you win the race as long as you're in the right race, if that makes sense. I think that's kind of what matters most. You just got to watch out. I think that's a real thing. Not everything in the jungle kills you and eats you. Some things are parasites. They just feed on you for as long as they can. And I think that's a real risk for a lot of people. Perfect example are cigarettes. Like, why do we still sell cigarettes? There's zero benefit. Even when I was a smoker, you'd say, well, it helps me relieve stress. No. Leaving, going outside, getting fresh air and sunlight and taking deep breaths, talking to a friend, taking a break and talking to a friend, that relieves stress. The cigarette does none of that. And so we've got these parasitic things in our society, and a lot of us become victim of them. And so you just got to be careful. That's really it. I mean, this is part advice, part just me rambling. It's just one of the things that I've learned, that you can't just trust because it's an authority, and that at the end of the day, we're all just really trying to survive as long as possible. And sometimes people will happily turn on you if that means they feel that they can survive longer. But at the same time, you can't necessarily turn your back on the world because we all need each other. But saying that at the same time, you don't want to be dependent on it. It's like a weird paradox. We all need each other, but you don't want to be dependent on anybody. And it's like a weird catch-22. It served me really well. I mean, it's like you look at the bees and the flowers. They never made an agreement to support each other, but they've created a relationship that's lasted for hundreds of years and has created ecosystems, entire ecosystems off of that relationship. So it's just a weird kind of catch-22 thing, I think. I think a lot of people do things out of a sense of obligation and duty. And I mean, some of those are great. Like I'm doing everything I can to be and I don't know if that's out of a sense of obligation or just wanting to do what I didn't have someone there for me to do. But again, it just comes back to managing your time, really being clear about your goals, making sure that you have the right goals. It's almost like asking the right questions. If you ask the right question, the problem is half solved. I think it was Einstein that said that. Really just committing yourself and avoiding the side traps that where you become, it's like the thing, if you don't have your own goals, you'll become part of someone else's. And it's kind of like that a little bit in that sense.
That's an extremely interesting school of thought, because I've never actually sat and thought about how even initially when you said that when I'm driving, I just think about the fact that somebody spent hours possibly in the sun building this road for me. And that thought has never occurred to me before, but now I know that thought's not going to leave my head.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, again, the internet that we're on, you want to get a little wooey-woo-foo. When did you become you? Was it when your consciousness came into the cells in your mom's tummy, or are you part of the situation of events which had to coincide for you to be conceived? Like, it's just a weird thing. Like, at what point did you become you? Were you already you when the series of events were in motion that caused you to be created? Were you when consciousness came into your being or spirit or whatever? Were you once you were born? Like, it's just this weird thing. It's like a fish is a fish, but if you take it away from water, it dies. So fish is as much water as the water is fish. That's why I say it's like us. We need each other. We all build together. But sometimes people get on each other's paths. And sometimes, like I said, like the cigarette example, I just don't know what the benefit of it is. I don't see any benefit at all, but it's a huge feature in our cultures and movies, right? It's a massive siphon on resources. What it does is it creates a need for hospitals to a certain extent. That's where I smoked cigarettes in high school, and it was $2 for a pack of cigarettes when I first started smoking. When I quit, it was $4.50 for a pack of cigarettes in Canada. And then later on, I think it was up to $15 for a single pack of cigarette. And that was all tax money because the government was tracking, because we had free healthcare in Canada, and they were tracking use of the healthcare system. And so in Canada, they would tax the products that put you in the hospital essentially, and they would try to ratio it so the tax matched like the amount of money we would have to spend on you because you use this product. And so that's how much that grew in Canada. For like, again, I just don't know what the benefit is. At the same time, I didn't figure out electricity. I didn't do the research that I compiled to come up with my findings on those 8 critical success factors. So we need each other. We are inseparably interlocked. I heard this said really well by Alan Watts. He said, you are to the universe what a wave is to the ocean. And it's all happening all the time simultaneously. And you can't separate it. You and I are connected. But at the same time, I have to focus on being the best me I can be. I call it with my daughter careful neglect. Like I always told my girlfriend, I'll never stop her from falling, but I'll always be there to catch her as much as I can. She needs to learn the lesson of, I can fall from this, but I want to make it so she doesn't get hurt. And it's this weird, again, like we have to be ourselves and be our best selves and learn our lessons ourselves. Because if your life depends on a crutch, when that crutch is taken away, if we're talking about trying to survive, now you are at a disadvantage. Whereas if you just struggled to not need that crutch to begin with, you can actually maybe build up the strength and the resilience, or even just a new way of doing something. And you develop an entirely new way of doing something that now creates almost like the birds and the bees, like flowers and the bees, a whole new ecosystem. We need each other. Even if you don't have an ethical bone in your body, the only way to behave in business is to treat everybody as best as you can. And that's why they used to say the customer is always right. It's not necessarily the customer is right, but you need to communicate with them in a way that demonstrates respect, even if you disagree, even if they leave somewhat unhappy. So at least you minimize the damage, because you can't, have fireworks with everyone. Again, that's why my tagline is your success is my success. It's just to help remind myself to try and take care of everybody as best as I can, while at the same time being selfish. You get what I mean? Like it's just that weird paradox you can't get out of, and respect it and appreciate it.
Yeah, that completely makes sense.
I'm a talker.
That's okay. There's a lot to learn. Even going back to what you initially mentioned, when do you become you? I think that address that question in the first place would just be the idea that you become a living being once your complete human body, even if it's as a fetus, once you have a heart and you can feel things inside. But then you become you once you're born, when things happen in your life and, all your external situations come together to create the person that you are. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, it's just tough to say, because you're saying, are you when you've become a living being and then you've collected experiences? And I get that. But at the same time, then aren't the experiences that collectively help create you part of you too? Because without those, you wouldn't have existed. If your mom and dad didn't decide to go to that place at that time and do that thing, you are the accumulation of your feelings and experiences and your DNA, the combination that you get from your mom and dad, and whatever you feel spiritually you are given. But it's just hard to say that if we just took an axe to the universal timeline and cut out a bunch of stuff that happened before you were conceived, that you wouldn't have been conceived. You weren't you. So that is threaded to you as much as everything else. There's semantics you can talk about when you identified as I. Well, I began to find identifying as I once I could open my eye. I was me as soon as I had a heartbeat. Okay. Again, there's weird things in the world that I don't know if we necessarily can definitively answer. And some people may feel strong emotions about what I've said. My point of it is that we are all connected, yet at the same time, no one is going to do your push-ups for you. And they can't. I can't hire anybody to do my push-ups and make my arms stronger. It just doesn't, the world doesn't work that way. So it's like life is a single person game where I have to do everything by myself, for myself, essentially. But we do it with all these other people around us. And we need each other in ways that we can't conceive. And you can't even predict. There's the story of the Chinese farmer. I'm going to say it, then I'll shut up. I know I talk a lot, but there's this Chinese farmer, and one day his horse runs away. And the neighbors go, "Oh, what bad luck." And he goes, "Well, maybe." And the next day, the wild horse comes back, and it brings 4 wild horses with it. The neighbors are like, "Wow, what good luck." And the farmer goes, "Maybe." And then the next day, his son is trying to tame some of these wild horses so they can use them in the farm or maybe sell them or something. And the horse throws his son off the back, and the son falls and breaks his leg. And the neighbors go, "Oh, that's such bad luck." And the farmer goes, "Maybe." And the next day, the army comes through and they're recruiting all the young men into the army to go off to war. But because the son has a broken leg, they don't take him. And the neighbors go, oh, what good luck. And the farmer goes, maybe. And the moral of the story is, it's just life is so dynamic and complex. It's hard to predict 7 steps down the road whether something you perceive as good or bad is actually good or bad, because we just don't know how everything's going to unfold. So there's a bit of faith and trust in life and just trying to do good. And then, of course, looking at history, right? Patterns, but it doesn't guarantee that the future will be like the past. This weird connectedness.
That makes sense. We're all interdependent beings, but we are dependent on each other in one way or another.
That's right.
Now we have come to a segment of our show where I ask you a couple of rapid fire questions. So this is like a think quick situation. It's our tiny version of a game show.
Okay.
What's your go-to comfort food?
Peanut butter.
Do you prefer tea or coffee?
Green tea specifically.
Oh, okay. Are you a cat person or a dog person?
Oh, I own cats now. I had a dog for 6 years. I've had cats more than dogs. I love them both.
I agree with that. And last one, when are you inviting us on your podcast?
Oh, sure. Well, we can talk about that after we turn off the recording. But yeah, happy to have you on the show for sure.
We will have that conversation later for sure. Now, before we wrap up, we would just like to ask you about your green pill moment. What green pill advice would you give to your younger self?
Live life true to yourself. I've said a lot of this advice already. Just be true to yourself. Trust your instinct. Even if you're wrong, you have to develop it over time. I don't know. I don't really have any regrets. I'm sure there's things I wish I could have done better. I mean, nobody knows what happens after this life, so make the most of it. Be less afraid, hesitate less often, do more.
That's actually a nice take on things, honestly. But thank you so much for sharing your amazing journey and your story with us today. I'm sure that our audience will thoroughly enjoy this conversation. I know I did.
I hope so. Here to help.
Before we say goodbye, could you just tell our listeners where they can find and follow you?
You can just search my name, Daryl Urbanski, Urbanski. You can also check out my website, BestBusinessCoach.ca for Canada. But again, it's just, we're all on the internet. So if you just search my name, I'll come up. You can follow me on your favorite social media channel. You can like, comment, engage. Yeah, even if my manager's managing it, if you ask a question, you're a real human, not a bot, and you're not spamming us, typically it does get back to me and I can give a reply. And that's really, really it.
Okay, so I think that wraps up our conversation. Thank you so much again for joining us today.
Thank you.
If you enjoy our conversations, please like and subscribe. See you next Wednesday.